Hey church, I hope this finds you well. My name is Brandon, for those of you who don't know me. My wife Samantha and we help out in Discover. And I wanted to first off say that it's an honor to be able to do the devotionals with you all this week, especially with it being Passion Week, a time where we get to reflect on some of the stories of Jesus before he goes up to the cross. When Pastor Tim asked for me to do the devotional this week, I wanted to look for a story that we could really resonate with during this unprecedented time. I don't think I need to let any of you know what's going on out there, but for those of you who are unaware, the reason why the streets are so quiet right now is because there's a little virus going around that's kind of shaking things up. There's a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety that's surrounding what's happening right now. And so I wanted to find a story that would speak to that in a way to kind of get us through with a little bit more of an understanding for how Jesus looks at this situation, for maybe even how Jesus looks at us in this situation. And I think Luke chapter 22, right after Jesus finishes the Passover meal with the disciples and right before he goes to the cross, we see him praying in the garden. And I think it's a really amazing story to be able to look at and maybe look at it from a different lens and a different understanding. At least that's how I did. And so it reads like this. Then, accompanied by the disciples, Jesus left the upstairs room and went as usual to the Mount of Olives. There he told them, "Pray that you will not give into temptation." He walked away about a stone's throw and he knelt down and prayed. I love that right there, because the common posture for prayer back in Jesus' time was to simply stand. And so the fact that Luke noted that he knelt down and prayed meant that this wasn't just going to be a casual checking in prayer. This was intentional. This was going to be a passionate and a really determined type of prayer. And so this prayer went like this: "Father, if you are willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Then an angel from heaven appeared and strengthened him. He prayed more fervently, and he was in such agony of spirit that his sweat fell to the ground like great drops of blood. Now, I think it's easy for us, since we understand the context of this story, right? We know what happened before this. We know what's going to happen after this. That when Jesus says, "Father, please take this cup of suffering away from me," that we might assume he's talking about a physical suffering, something that is going to happen to his body, which we know is going to be the cross. We've seen the gruesome stories of that. We've read through those, and we know that that would be a fair thing for him to pray about. But what I love is that Jesus isn't actually worried about the physical torment that he's about to go through. He was not afraid of death. He didn't fear death. He considered the cross joy because of what was going to be set before him after the fact. And what I love is that he's referring to a spiritual suffering, because what's going to happen is the wrath of God is going to be brought upon Jesus on our behalf. So there's going to be a separation, a spiritual separation that takes place with Jesus and God on that cross. And that's the cup of suffering that he's referring to repeatedly in the Old Testament. I love to think about it too, the fact that, Jesus only read the Old Testament. I don't know why. It's just so funny to me. It's like, we can get a lot of good stuff out of the Old Testament, guys, trust. But the cup of suffering, is repeatedly referred to when talking about the wrath of God and the judgment of God. And so when Jesus is saying, "Please take this cup of suffering from me," he's not talking about physical, he's talking about the spiritual. And this tormented Jesus in such a way that it literally caused him to, for his sweat to be blood, for blood to come from his sweat. And this is a very rare, but it's a medical condition that's called hematidrosis. And this is where your body, when undergoing an extreme amount of stress and anxiety, is literally going to sweat blood. And this is exactly what Jesus is dealing with. This is not a casual thing that he's going through. This is an intense anxiety. This is intense fear that he is feeling. And I think that's something that we might be able to resonate. Now, I hope no one is sweating blood at home. That would be terrifying. But I think that we can understand what anxiety and fear look like and feel like right now. Maybe for some of you who have never dealt with anxiety or fear to this degree, this might be a new season for you. I can say that for me personally, I have been dealing with a lot of anxiety during this time. The anxiety wasn't so much concern for my job. I'm so thankful that I'm able to be able to work from home right now. my anxiety was not really concerned even about my own personal health, but my anxiety was coming from the fact that we have a newborn at home, and if Samantha gets sick, what are we going to do? For all you dads out there that are raising newborns, you do good. You try. That's basically what you do your best, I guess you can say. But there really is nothing that scratches the surface compared to what a mother has to do for a newborn. It's unrivaled, really. And so my fear and concern was coming from that place. Like, what happens if Samantha gets sick? What happens if this affects Lucy? And like, how are we going to handle this? What are we going to do? And so, from the very beginning, since the quarantine really was set in place, I was dealing with anxiety like I really had never dealt with before. It was borderline crippling. There was points where it turns out babies like to wake up in the middle of the night. Crazy, but it happens. There's points where I was just trying to sleep through that because I was like, I need sleep to try to figure out, if I don't feel good in the morning, then it's going to cause even more. My immune system's going to drop, and it was just completely destroying everything. And so I was, talking to Samantha about it, and we would pray over the situation, and she'd pray over me, and I would read my Bible, I'd pray to God, I'd do the things, I'd check the list, and at times it would feel better, but overall it was still always in the back of my head. I kept looking at the news, which was a foolish thing to do. If you're dealing with fear and anxiety, step one, don't look at the news, right? Like, if there's some pressing information that needs to get to you, it'll find its way to you. You can trust me on that. But I was not doing anything. I was doing some stuff to help it, but overall it was still just kind of in the back of my head. I would still have dreams about it. It was a lot, but I would still try to find these moments with God where I could go to my secret place and spend some time with him to really kind of work through it. And so my wife and I, we live in San Francisco, like a lot of you. So you can all understand and appreciate that when I'm talking about my home, my massive home with so many rooms at a reasonable price where I could just go and find a quiet place, that's not a challenge at all. That's not true. We live in a small studio that the rent is debatable. But nonetheless, we're fortunate enough to have one door. And that door leads into Lucy's room, which is very much consumed during the day with diaper changes, feedings, you name it. There's a lot that goes on in that room. So it's rarely unoccupied. But I've been trying to find my moments with God in there, closing that door, and really just trying to listen to worship, read my Bible, and pray. And on one particular day, I told Samantha, I'm going to go pray. And she asked how I'm doing, because usually I would go in there when I'm kind of feeling that anxiety, my chest tightening up and all of that. And I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm just checking in, kind of thing, like a casual prayer. And she said, okay, let me change Lucy's diaper real quick, and then you can have at it. And I'm like, okay, you know what? That might take a little bit longer. I need to take a shower anyways. I'll just go spend my time with Jesus in the shower, and we'll be good. So I go into the restroom, light a candle, set the mood, put worship music on, do the thing. And again, my agenda was simple. Check in. See how you're doing, God. How are things? And that was about it. But what was amazing was it was far from that. As I began to kind of close my eyes and go to my secret place, I was picturing my secret place as this kind of cabin room, if you will. And as I was opening that door, I saw Jesus standing there, and with his arms wide open and looking at me with the biggest smile in the world. I completely lost it. My previous life before I became a Christian was I was considered myself an atheist, and I wanted nothing to do with God. And so more often than not, when I would picture Jesus looking at me, it was a very stoic and stern look. So it was to my surprise that during this casual prayer, I actually opened the door to a joyful Jesus with his arms open to me, and I absolutely lost it. I just began to weep during this time, and really completely humbled before God and be like, I am terrified. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to act. I don't know how to get rid of this fear. I don't know how to get rid of this anxiety. And I wish I could say at the end of that whole time, I was able to walk away from it with an understanding of the cure to this coronavirus, when we're going to be out of quarantine, that all of the businesses in the world are going to be successful, and here's how to get rid of anxiety and fear every single time. Wasn't able to walk away with that. But what I was able to walk away with was this peace that truly went beyond my understanding. I don't know how I got to that place, but there was this moment that I was able to spend with God and understand that he is with us during this. And the reason why I got stuck on Luke 22 was because right here we get to see that Jesus doesn't just understand our situation from afar. He understands it personally. Jesus is literally so consumed with anxiety and so consumed with fear and stress that he's sweating blood. So this isn't a casual worry. This is a deep worry. And I think me reading that helped me to really understand in a new way that Jesus is not far off. This is a personal situation that he's going through, that we're going through, and that he's not just looking off from a distance and saying, you're fine, you're going to get through this. He wants us to get so close with him and so humbled by him to understand that he knows what we're going through in a personal way. And what he took to the cross, the reason he went to the cross, when he was on the cross and he said, it is finished, he wasn't referring to a simple act. He was referring to the fact that it is finished. Our anxiety, our fear, he took all of that with him to the cross. So during this time, I want to challenge you. What does your prayer life look like? Again, I'm not trying to lighten anxiety and fear. That's a real thing, especially during all this. But I want to challenge you. What would happen if you spent that time with Jesus in a new, humbling kind of way, and you looked at stories like this to not just understand that Jesus understands your situation from afar, but personally. He personally understands what's going on, and because of the cross, because of what he did, because of the cup that he took upon himself, we are able to walk in a freedom and a peace that truly does go beyond understanding. Church, I'm excited for this Easter. It's going to look different. I don't imagine any church in the world has ever thought in their head, what if we did our Easter service online? But I think that we're walking into a new season. I think we're walking into a unique season where we will be able to have a relationship with Jesus like we've never had before, because most of us, if not all of us, have never gone through a situation like this before where we are so desperate for Jesus. So church, I'm believing the best. I know that the best is right around that corner. Stay healthy out there. Stay safe. Stay inside. That's important. Keep 6 feet distance. Wear a mask. All the essentials. But more importantly, spend time with God during this time. And if you're dealing with that fear and anxiety, go before him humbly, but also go before him understanding that he has dealt with this in a personal way and he wants to help you through it. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.